Good morning. We are live from the Nasdaq market site in Times Square, New York, where Scripps Interactive just rang the opening bell. Now joining us for a special interview, we have Andrew Zimmern, a three-time James Beard Award-winning TV personality, chef, writer, and teacher. And as the creator and executive producer of the host Bizarre Foods franchise on Travel Channel, including Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmern, Andrew Zimmern's Bizarre World, Bizarre Foods America, and the new Bizarre Foods Delicious Destinations. It is a pleasure to have you here this morning, fresh off of the opening bell. How do you feel?
It was fun.
Yeah?
Yeah, they tell you about everything except the exploding confetti. The music, swells, and there's this momentous moment, and it's great to celebrate the mothership's move to Nasdaq, and to see, for someone who's been associated with Travel Channel now for almost 13 years since I started first courting them to do a show, and the company is 22 years old.
Sure.
So I've been around and seen it grow from one network to this incredible lifestyle network. It's amazing, and for my own career to see it grow. I was talking to Ken Lowe, our fearless leader, and to go from please let me do a test pilot for you.
Certainly.
Give me $5,000 to give you a sneak peek about what this show could be, and now to have essentially, every Tuesday night of the year, new Andrew Zimmern content and, fantastic older shows rerun, and a whole evening sort of devoted.
Right.
It's an amazing thing. It's goose pimply stuff.
And certainly as you're coming up on this is the 10th anniversary of Bizarre Foods. I mean,
the way cable works is, the A and B seasons, and it's a bifurcated thing, and this is I think technically our 10th year of doing shows.
Okay.
I think officially it's hard to keep all the numbers going. Sure. All I know is I've been doing it for almost 13 years. I've been doing it pretty much exclusively at Travel Channel, and it's my home, and we've made almost 300 hours of television for them over those years. More, 400 if you include Delicious Destinations. So that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. But what's in store for this season that we can look forward to? We know you've already been to some amazing destinations.
Yeah, we literally just a week or two ago wrapped shooting for the season that starts on June 21st. Shanghai, North Carolina, the Bronx, Sweden. We go to some incredible places, and we do some amazing things. I think the big difference this year is, the world changes very, very quickly. Complete fluke, not planned. We found ourselves in this season, 13 years after I walked in the door, doing an episode from Madrid, which was coincidentally not the first show that aired, but the first show we shot.
Wow. In
the history of the series. So Madrid has changed in those 10 years since we last went there and shot. Their food culture is different. How they view food is different. The role traditional food plays in the culture has changed. It's actually something that chefs are trying to imitate, nurture, preserve, as opposed to reject, which the modernists were doing in Madrid 10 years ago when we were there. And the same can be said all over the world in the stops that we've gone. I was just editing our North Carolina show last night in my hotel room till like 2 in the morning. And
wow.
People are like, North Carolina, well, what's interesting going on there? Well, in the downeastern part of the state, it's sort of like the neglected, stepchild counties. The tourism money goes to the central part of the state and the western part of the state. North Carolina is a booming economy, and it's just a fantastic food culture there.
Certainly.
Think barbecue and stuff. But the downeastern part of the state is neglected. And so to be able to go in there and tell stories, and the down east, they don't want a lot to do with the growing up of the world. They just want to stay traditional and focused on what's been homey for them.
Sure.
And it's amazing to see such selfless ego in a world that where everywhere else I go, it's about me, 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 me. Everywhere we go, they want to promote something. They're like, hey, we're just doing our own thing quietly here. It's a fascinating season to take a look, because at the end of the day, it's not so much fat guy runs around world, puts bugs in mouth. It's about teaching patience, tolerance, and understanding, and exploring cultures through food.
Certainly.
And having a lot of fun along the way. We have a lot of fun in this season.
And it certainly looks that way. And you've seen the evolution of a lot of the foods and a lot of these cultures, as you were mentioning just now. What's one of the most, and I know a lot of our viewers want to know this as well, what's one of the most bizarre foods, like one that you look back on and just say, goodness gracious, I cannot believe I digested that?
Well, there's some fairly heinous processes to get to an edible foodstuff.
Sure.
In every culture has a food that they let essentially rot and decompose for so long that eventually, well, if you had it at 2 weeks, it would kill you. But at 3 months, the good bacteria has killed the bad bacteria, and it can be made edible. Sometimes cooked, sometimes not. And there's, fish in southern India that way. There's fermented bread in Ethiopia. There's hakarl, the fermented Greenlandic ice shark in Iceland. I mean, every culture around the world has a food. Damamane in Taiwan has a food like that. And you can smell it. It's rotten. It's very hard to digest. Most interesting to me are what I call the Dr. Seuss animals. The crazy little quirks of nature that you didn't know existed until you got there. We were in Samoa, and there's a coral worm that comes out of the deepest part of the ocean only once or twice a decade when atmospheric conditions are right. Hot sun, dead calm ocean, and these worms come up and they die on the surface of the ocean in the sun, and then they fall down, and without them the coral won't regenerate and stay alive. So their sole purpose coming out of these holes, they're an invasive species to the coral, but they service the coral in their death. Right. And the natives scoop them off the surface of the ocean. It's called pololo, and smear it on bread and eat it. It's a bright blue, looks like algae. Yeah. You eat a food like that, and you're just sitting there yourself going, my gosh, not only did I not know this existed, it's completely strange and odd, but what a radical treat, and I love the taste of it, but more importantly, I will never see that again in my lifetime. I may go back to that part of the deep Pacific and be 20 miles off the coast of the Samoan atoll, but will I ever be there in dead calm ocean when the pololo are floating to the surface? I mean, that kind of thing is what a privilege and what a pinch me moment.
Right. Bizarre, but amazing, too, when you think about all of the things that have to align to even experience that.
Webster defines bizarre as being unique and interesting.
Good.
Right? Okay. And we sort of hopped on that definition right away. Right. Selling the show to potential guests the first season was a real challenge. Okay. Hi, we're doing the show called Bizarre Foods. We eat foods from the fringe as a way to tell stories. Now, looking back and with the success of the show, to be able to say to people, well, stories from the fringe are more interesting, and through that we're able to tell different stories about the culture that people haven't heard before, so it makes for better television. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I get that. At the beginning it was very, very difficult. People, they thought they were being Borated. Oh, wow. The movie had just come out. Yeah. They're like, no way, hanging up the phone. And it's amazing watching the reach now, and the shows in 70 countries, and the list of people calling us to say, hey, we've got this really amazing story, you may want to come check us out. And when we started making the show, there were no iPhones. So now we can have local producers, fixers, writers, contacts, friends we email, say, hey, run out there and take a couple pictures or interview the guy for us, and we can actually talk to the farmer in Korea before we ever travel there to shoot a frame of the show. So it's a much different production world too. Outside
of your televised travels and the show, you also maintain a very well put together digital presence. What advice would you give towards other chefs or just businesses in general who are looking to kind of put together a similar social stature, digital stature? You have audio, or podcasts out there, you've got video content that's out there, so many things that are aligned.
Yeah. Honesty and authenticity. Okay. I mean, people sniff out the dishonest and the inauthentic right away. It's boring to them. Being regular. If you can develop a following, you have to stay regular with it. Okay. You also need to tell stories, with your picture. A picture of you and I, hey, hanging out, is one thing. Throwing some text underneath it that talks about the interview and why we're here takes a picture and turns it into something that's way more meaningful. I met with every year my PR team and I, we sit down at the end of the year and sort of go through things. And in 2015, aside from my TV career, so that's everything other than Travel Channel touches, I had 1 billion impressions. Throw in all the media and the views around the world on television, it's an incredible, incredible audience.
Right.
How you harness that community is not easy. I don't pretend to know how to harness that.
Sure.
So I'm probably a bad advice giver. I can only tell you what I do and what my experience is, and that's keep it fresh, keep it regular, keep it interesting, and above all, tell a story. Tell a story. I would also say this. It may get you in trouble sometimes, but have an opinion.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about, you posting a picture at the concert. Thousands of other people are doing that too.
Same thing.
But let them know what you thought about it, or what your experience is like. Comment on it in some way. Have an opinion. Like-minded people will want to continue to associate themselves with you, even by just following you and clicking on you, if you offer an opinion. Have a point of view.
Yeah.
Tell a story.
Who were some of your favorite chefs that have perhaps influenced, your shows, the culinary expertise that you've developed over the years? Mm-hmm. Who's a chef's chef to you?
Oh my God. I mean, there's so many amazingly talented culinarians around the world, and the famous names are really easy to mention.
Sure.
What I have found that's way more interesting to me is being in tiny little out of the way towns, mm-hmm. and stumbling upon a chef who's been doing a certain type of cookery for 50 years,
sure.
whose food is as good as anyone else's, who gets all the pub. So, yeah. I mean, I love Chinese food,
okay.
right? A lot of famous Chinese chefs in China. A lot of famous Chinese chefs here in America, from Peter Chang all the way down.
Yeah.
In China, in Chengdu, Yu Bo is, I think one of the greatest chefs in the world, and a friend of mine. I love his food. I was in Shanghai for this show, and I stumbled across a private restaurant in a lady's apartment. She goes by the name of Sister Wang,
okay.
and I've never eaten Chinese food of that quality before.
Wow.
I mean, I think I found easily the best secret restaurant in Shanghai that we documented in the show, but the quality of her food was out of sight. If she was cooking in a restaurant or owned a conventional restaurant, and especially if she owned one in Europe or America cooking Chinese food, she would be on the cover of every magazine, she would be the object of every interview, and would win thousands of awards.
That's amazing.
All she does is cook for 20 people every night in her apartment in Shanghai, but the food is beyond compare. And so those are the things that I stand back in awe, and especially in our look at me
yeah.
world. As far as chefs I admire who are everyday names, and it's not because they also have a multimedia presence, but people like Mario Batali and Tom Colicchio and Jose Andres and those folks, to me, are great examples, because chef comes from a medieval French term that also incorporates the notion of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And chefs like that have taught me by example that once you have a platform, if you don't do something with it
yeah.
for good, to change the world, to make it better, you're wasting your time and you're ignoring your social responsibility. And so I remember 5 years ago judging an episode of Iron Chef with Jose.
Yeah.
And, he saw something in me, and he took me out for a night on the town until about 5 in the morning, lecturing me for 5 or 6 hours about making sure to do something for good for the world, mm-hmm. and devoting a significant portion of my time to service.
Sure.
And I took his advice and did it. Mario Batali 4 years ago grabbed me by the collar and sat me down alone on a gondola ride going up Ajax Mountain in Aspen at the Food and Wine event, and told me flat out, you need to take summers off. You need to spend time with your family. Your career's going to grow. It's only going to get bigger until you die. Mm-hmm. It was very complimentary. He said, you have that thing,
okay.
And that means you're going to keep being more and more successful. So if you don't carve out that time, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. I mean, the people who get in your face and tell you the thing you need to do to be happier, more successful, and to be a better global citizen, right. Those are the people that impress the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Tom Colicchio, who devotes a very large amount of his time to service and is trying to change the face of how we eat and view food in America by, through political action.
Right.
Those are the guys that really impress me a lot. As far as chefs, I mean, Dominique Crenn on the West Coast. I think Marco Canora here in New York City might be the most undervalued, underrated chef in the United States.
Wow.
A brilliant culinarian who you ask every chef, he's on everyone's top 5 list. Yeah. I look at guys like Michael White and Nobu Matsuhisa and the organizations they've built. That really amazes me. I look at artists like Dominique or like Michael Voltaggio, who are very committed to a singleness of purpose experimentally.
Sure.
I look at guys like Ludo Lefebvre, who not only have the marketer's gift, but also have an incredible palate. Everyone looks at Ludo the showman, and they don't understand, because they don't get a chance to taste with him and talk food, what an incredible palate that man has.
Absolutely.
Or to, my friend Marcus Samuelson, who has devoted so much of his life to service in Africa. The range is incredible. Chefs are I really do believe the food community is the most generous, giving community in the world. I'd rather be with that community than any other community of people, bar none. And they do so much for so many, both accounted for and unaccounted for. It's a privilege to be a part of that group.
Being here at Nasdaq, we have to talk numbers a little bit. Specifically with regard to millennials and their cooking habits. Through research, Kraft Foods and McGarry Bowen, they found that people over 35 more likely to print out a recipe, and 59% of 25 to 34-year-olds cook with either their smartphones or a tablet device nearby. Knowing this, how have you shifted your content production approach for some of that content that lives online and that they may be utilizing to glance at while they cook?
Well, we're very aware of that. When the iPhone and the iPad first hit the market, previous to that, I would bring my laptop into the kitchen because I had all my recipes and notes and things on that device. Then it was my phone, then it was the iPad. Now we have our kitchen wired, so we actually have a screen in there. So it's, we used to call them TVs. It's a monitor. It's an old little flat screen that now we have wired digitally so that we can scroll, and I can look at recipes on my website, other websites, look at notes. More importantly, I think the way it's changed, and I think this is where young people are really understanding and going to be much better cooks than my generation was. I don't really give a hoot whether you follow the recipe. What I'm more concerned is that you're following the technique and learning something by doing it. Because if you follow a recipe and you cook, chicken sauteed with wild mushrooms and asparagus, great, fantastic. But if you understand the principles of pan sauteing and building a sauce with the mushrooms and asparagus to put over there, and then you make the little rice accompaniment or whatever is you've picked up off of another website, if you pay attention to the technique, you can cook hundreds of things, hundreds of different ways because you're understanding a methodology, right? Nowadays, you can go on YouTube, you can go on my site and actually watch videos of people cooking or me cooking. And by watching someone cook, it's so much better. I mean, it's like, I don't know if you like to golf or bowl or play baseball, but if you can read a book about how to improve your swing, but if you actually look at someone doing it, you're like, oh yeah, that's much better.
Absolutely.
When I tell someone, don't hold your knife like this, hold it like this, and choke up on it, so if you have more control over the tip of the blade, so you'll cut easier, faster, and you won't cut your hand, you'll cut the carrot. And people do it and they're like, oh my God, I never knew that. When you describe it to them, it's very difficult. When you show them, it's learned in an instant. I think today's generation of young people are going to be much more highly skilled at everything because they can actually see people doing in real time. And you can't think your way into right acting, but you can act your way into right thinking. And so by looking and doing and seeing something, you can incorporate it into your lifestyle. On andrewzimmern.com, we're doing more and more video, more and more cooking lessons, more and more sequential pictures. we're approaching that 1,000 different ways because there's no need for recipes. I'm working on a cookbook right now, and I'm not even sure we're going to do conventional publishing with it. We were probably going to do it as a digital product simply because I'm not sure that it would be as useful in hardcover paper as it would be living as something that people can touch and feel and move around and watch.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's a great quote, by the way. You can't think your way into right acting, but you can act your way into right thinking.
Oh, it's a spiritual, I wish I thought of it myself. It's a spiritual axiom. It's my second favorite one.
Yeah.
But implicit in that is the idea that you're going to be asked to take steps that you don't believe in to get results you can't imagine.
Absolutely.
And I think both those things are true, and I try to live my life by them.
Absolutely. And I agree with everything you're saying about millennials and how we're learning how to cook, because I myself watch YouTube while I'm cooking and just trying to see how other chefs are doing it, and trying to apply that to my own cooking as well.
I'm so bullish. I think the current and I hate the label millennials, but I think young people today, we finally have a generation that I think is going to save our planet, and I'm thrilled about that because I'm the parent of an 11-year-old.
Awesome.
So I need my 20-somethings to save this planet because the 50-somethings right now are just arguing about it. Wow. The 20-somethings are doing something about it. They're acting. We're just talking.
We appreciate having you here today. Just before we sign off, we do want to give you the opportunity to rattle off your Instagram handles, Twitter handles, how people can follow you.
Everything
engaged.
The easiest thing in the world is andrewzimmern.com because all my stuff is there. On Instagram, I'm at Chef AZ. Okay. On Twitter, I'm at Andrew Zimmern, and I'm Andrew Zimmern on Facebook.
Perfect. Andrew, we loved having you here for the opening bell. Hope you enjoyed the whole experience being here at Nasdaq, and certainly come back soon. We'll have to
I would
set
love
up a
to,
station
and a huge thank you to the digital and the Facebook community especially. I learn more from the people having a conversation with me. I'm bored with what I think and do. I put it out there because other people are interested, but what I get back is tenfold what I put out there, and I think that's the beautiful part of social media.